Smooth as Silk, which will be jointly presented today by Paul Nathaniel and Roger Clark. So this webinar will introduce to you the process of becoming a SiLC and subsequently an SQP, and it will also explain the affiliate scheme, which is designed to support you through the entire process. And Roger and Paul will be on hand to answer any questions you have regarding either qualification. So Paul and Roger are highly qualified speakers on this subject, and they both hold the SiLC and SQP qualifications themselves and have sat on the SiLC professional and technical panel for many years. Roger is also a SiLC assessor and assists with the preparation of questions from the SiLC exam. So a little bit of background for the IES. Our Land Condition Community is our member-led special interest group, which assists the institution to deliver tailored events, activities, guidance and training opportunities for professionals working in this area. The Popular Land Conditions Symposium is our technical one-day conference, which is approaching its third year and will take place in 2020 in March in Bristol. It always moves to different cities around the UK, and more details about that can be found on the IES website. We also run a series of events for our Land Conditional Early Careers Network, which are defined as professionals in the first 10 years of their career. We run numerous webinars just like this and have various different routes that you can follow to chartership, including our unique one-day workshops for both the Chartered Environmentalist and Chartered Scientist. There's a couple of links in the chat box already about how you can find out a little bit more about these two things, and I will add some more throughout the webinar as well. So I will now hand over to Paul and Roger, who are excellently placed to give you a detailed insight into these two qualifications. As always, you can ask questions throughout this webinar, so do submit them in the chat box in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, and the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, during any part of this webinar, and I will ask them on your behalf at the end. So thank you all for logging in, and Roger and Paul, it's over to you.
Thanks so much indeed, Rhianna. What Rhianna forgot to mention is that IES has recently joined the SiLC register. So they've joined a number of other organizations that we'll be talking about a bit later on. So welcome on board, folks. I'll be taking you through the first half of the webinar, and then Roger will be picking up from me to the end. You've got our CVs or our bios in front of you. There were also the words that were on the website promoting this event. So the question is, who is a SiLC? Well, they're a person, they're a senior professional who could be working in a company or for themselves. And a SiLC is somebody who has been independently assessed as having a high level of competency in the work involved around land condition. They have the skills to interpret information, to brief clients and regulators, and to advise on the next course of action. What they're not is necessarily an expert in all fields. The idea is that you identify what needs to be known and work out who is best placed to provide you with that information. The origins of SiLC come in the urban task force that was set up 21 years ago by John Prescott when he was Deputy Prime Minister, chaired by Lord Rogers, and the reasons behind the urban task force was in the 90s a recognition of urban decline across the country, alongside a realization that we were going to be increasingly living in cities. And so therefore we needed a vision for those cities that Lord Rogers encapsulated by having design excellence, focusing on making sure that social well-being and environmental responsibility are at the center of that design. The Urban Task Force report towards an urban renaissance made 105 recommendations, and SiLC emerged from one of those recommendations. 5 years on, in 2005, writing in the preface of the review report towards a strong urban renaissance, Lord Rogers talked about believing in cities, in citizens, in civil society, and in city government that delivers visions. He recognized that culture comes from cities and that cities are also the engines of our economy. And he stated a belief that a well-designed, compact city is the only sustainable urban environment. Over the coming decades, half of the world's population will live in cities. So we need to make sure that we're designing ones that are going to last and be able to be sustainable. So SiLC has been around since 2000, and it was set up in order to set high standards in the land condition, land redevelopment sector. What being a SiLC, having that qualification does, is it provides a third party, it could be a client, it could be an investor, with evidence that what they're getting is land condition advice that is reliable and competent. Alongside that, we've seen in the last couple of years the emergence of the suitably qualified person who can sign off a declaration of document adequacy under the National Quality Mark scheme. So you can apply to become a SiLC and at the same time become an SQP. At the moment, all SQPs are SiLCs, but not all SiLCs are SQPs. So the National Quality Mark scheme, developed by the National Brownfield Forum, was there to provide a kite mark, if you will, to identify that a document has been checked for quality by an individual who is deemed to be suitably qualified and experienced. And the process of doing that is at the end of the SiLC assessment process, there is an extra exam about the mechanics of how the NQMS scheme operates. It's only 2 years old, and the idea is that the NQMS sign-off increases confidence in the people using reports, and therefore people can focus on the recommendations rather than unpacking the details of how those recommendations were arrived at. Now, the Urban Task Force, going back to that 20-year-old document, identified a benefit in making sure that everybody involved in land transactions and land redevelopment was working off the same data sets, and that they could then agree on the levels of risk that a particular site or proposed new use might present. That was the advantage that the Urban Task Force identified. So SiLC was there to make sure that that information, those data sets, were produced and could be relied upon. So why bother registering? Well, it's an objective demonstration of your competency. A requirement of the National Planning Policy Framework in England is that site investigation reports, including risk assessments, should be carried out by a competent person. SiLCs and SQPs, the systems have been developed and are run by us, professionals working in our sector. So this is our peers saying, yes, this person knows what they're doing and they are competent to do what you are paying them to do. The qualifications provide evidence of high standards and high quality. A SiLC scheme, a SiLC sign-off, has been a long-standing sign of reliability that gives confidence to the parties involved in land transactions. The NQMS's main focus, on the other hand, is the planning system. It's to make sure that the reports submitted through the planning system are fit for purpose, and that means that decisions can be made more quickly and land can be available for redevelopment more quickly. A recent example of the use of an SQP is in the additional environmental checks that were carried out alongside in the vicinity of the Grenfell Tower. And this is work that was reported about 10 days ago through MHCLG. So the two schemes offer evidence, and they are evidence of both competency and skills about the ability to assess the wider aspects of reusing brownfield land, a capability of making sure that our reports are at the right quality and that the work has been done by people who have the right skill level. And Roger will talk a bit about the Brownfield Skills Framework when he takes over. There's an ability to recognize that individuals may have deep expertise, but a team is needed to cover all aspects of a project, and to make sure that both internal and external quality control procedures are properly applied throughout the process. I'm just scrolling down my slides. There we go. So the NQMS's origins were from the Environment Agency, and at the time it was the Environment Agency of England and Wales. It's a recognition by the agency that a process of getting higher confidence in a report would be valuable. It would speed up decision making by the regulators. The NQMS is referenced within planning guidance and recommended and supported by the Environment Agency's chief exec. And we're seeing increasing take-up across local authorities. And you see here a number of local authorities and the counties within which they lie. To date, there are around 70 declarations made by SQPs. I tried to find a more accurate number, but I couldn't do that this morning. So around 70 or so have been declared. This is what a declaration looks like. It's a 3-page document in this case, and this is the only one that I'm aware of as being in the public domain. If you can read the small print, you'll realize that it's one that I signed off about 10 days ago. So that's what a declaration looks like. Now, a SiLC is a professional qualification above chartered. Professional is somebody who is deemed by his or her peers to have the right knowledge base and to apply that in accordance with a code of ethics or a code of practice. So the SiLC code of practice is there to ensure that somebody who wants to be a SiLC is committed to the aims and objectives of SiLC of continual improvement in the competence of those people working in land condition, and to both establish professional reputations, enhance those, and uphold those reputations so that the public, who are in a sense our ultimate clients, can rely on our work. So what does a SiLC sign up to do? There are 12 parts to this code of practice, talking about the integrity of our profession, doing our work in an honest, diligent, impartial manner, making sure that we understand the legal context in the country that we're practicing in, recognizing that the UK has 4 such countries with 4 different legal regimes, not allowing any conflicts to influence our decision making, not being influenced in our professional judgment, and to making sure that we continually strive to improve both our knowledge and our skills base. And this, I guess, is what's motivating Roger and me today, to assist candidates coming into the profession. A specialist in land condition, the code continues, will maintain levels of proficiency, both their own and across the profession, that we will give a good understanding of the consequences of following our advice and of alternative courses of action. To recognize that there are limitations both of personal competence and of the information available for a particular site, and to make sure that that information is as correct and accurate as can be made. To make sure that we don't endorse information that cannot be signed off, verified as being accurate, and to make sure that we try and uphold the reputation of the Register of Specialists in Land Condition. So the process of becoming a SiLC begins by writing a written application that demonstrates your experience. Within that, you include evidence of your academic qualifications, your background in land condition, your membership of a relevant professional body. That could be a chartered environmentalist through the IES, it could be a chartered geologist through the Geological Society, and so on. And 2 references that are sent directly to SiLC from 2 people who have agreed to write a reference for you. The next stage is a written assessment. It's an open book exam that tests your knowledge, your understanding, and your application of different types of legislation and technical guidance. And then that is followed by a peer interview where you're interviewed by 2 people, normally one person who has a similar background to you, and one person who comes from a totally different profession. So in my case, my second person was a chartered surveyor who asked me all sorts of questions about valuation of land affected by contamination. And my answer, to put it in a nutshell, was, well, I understand the general principles, but actually I don't do valuation. I would go to a chartered surveyor to do that work. And of course, that was the correct answer. The SiLC PTP, the Professional and Technical Panel, looks at the results and approves those results. There is now an additional step, which is at the end of this process, at the end of the exam, there is a multiple choice question set that tests your understanding of the NQMS. And if you become a SiLC and you've chosen to take that multiple choice exam, you automatically become a suitably qualified person. So the criteria that you need to demonstrate are that you need to show your own particular expertise. You have a thorough knowledge of that. You have an awareness and understanding of other relevant fields and professions. I'm just giving you an example of, in my case, being aware of what the surveyors do in terms of valuation. Demonstrating objective judgment, unbiased judgment in the handling of information and data. Communicating well with different parties, different stakeholders, showing familiarity with a structured way of presenting complicated data, including something called the land condition record that emerged in the early days as something that would help meet Lord Rogers' idea of having standardized information, and being aware of and demonstrating a compliance with the code of practice that I introduced a few slides ago. So, the SiLC affiliate scheme, I think I've just missed a slide. There we go. The SiLC affiliate scheme is our mechanism for somebody entering the process, moving towards chartership and SiLC registration. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Roger.
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, everybody. The main purpose of this section of the webinar is to talk about the SiLC affiliate scheme. However, to do that, I first need to outline to you the National Brownfield Skills Framework, which Paul has already mentioned. But even before I do that, there is one further piece of information I would like to give you with regard to the NQMS. Claire have produced a map which is on their website at this link. I can't show you how the link works on this webinar, but I can just give you a bit of a flavour with regard to what is actually on the link. The map is there, and there is also a list of those local authorities that can that relate to the links on the map. What you can see here is only a part of the map, which just gives a bit of an indication. Apart from Sunderland up in the northeast, there appear to be 3 clusters of authorities who signpost the NQMS. These are first of all around Staffordshire, then around Worcester and West Midlands, and finally a larger area to the north of London. This next slide shows the listing of those local authorities. As I've said, this is only a part of that listing, but it gives information with regard to each one of the local authorities and where the information is provided. Now to talk about the National Brownfield Skills Framework, which some of you may be familiar with under the previous name of the Land Condition Skills Development Framework. The Brownfield Skills Strategy was published in 2008 by organisations that became part of the Homes and Communities Agency, now Homes England. It recommended the preparation of a land condition skills development framework, which was initially issued in 2009 by SiLC and revised and considerably expanded in 2014, again by SiLC. It has now been adopted by the National Brownfield Forum. So what is the National Brownfield Skills Framework? It sets out descriptions of key behaviour and skills and a combination of knowledge and experience that an individual needs in order to be effective at various tasks at a certain level of capability. The framework enables measurement of progression. It can be integrated with existing company systems, and some companies have done this. Others use it as it is. It encompasses generic and technical skills. It's tiered to enable assessment throughout a person's career. It is referred to in the NQMS page of the CLARE website, and it's referred to in the SQP Declaration of Document Adequacy. I'll explain a little bit more in the next few slides. A copy of the NBSF can be obtained from the SiLC website. The framework has 13 categories of capability, split between generic and technical, which are intended to cover the majority of activities that a person will be involved in. These 13 categories are listed on this slide. There are 5 levels of capability. These range from an initial awareness through becoming proficient to eventually becoming an expert, with these terms being defined in the table on this slide. It is not intended that an individual would be at the same level for all categories that were shown on the previous slide. For example, they could be level 3 in finance and commercialism, but level 5 in one of the technical categories. Don't try to read this slide. It is just an example of the capability sheets that are in the framework. There are 80 of these sheets to cover the 13 categories of capability and levels 2 to 5. There are no sheets for level 1 because at this level an individual is aspiring to level 2. Most of the categories have more than one sheet per level. Each sheet indicates activities, the task that an individual should be capable of, and the indicators that they have achieved the task at the required level. These capabilities are high-level descriptions of key behaviours, skills, and knowledge that underpin effective performance. They define what effective performers actually understand, apply, or demonstrate in most situations, most of the time, to achieve the best results. They apply to both public and private sectors. This is just to remind you of the various categories, both generic and technical. The risk assessment section has now been expanded by SOBRA and is referred to in their application guide. It is expected that at level 1, a practitioner would be in the early learning stages of their career following graduation. A practitioner with skills and experience necessary for levels 3 or 4 would be capable of applying for chartership. A practitioner operating at levels 4 or 5 would be expected to be capable of applying to become a registered SiLC. Again, don't try and read this slide. It's just to illustrate that the skills framework has been developed into an Excel worksheet, which is available from the SiLC website. What you see here is just my attempt to transfer the front sheet to a slide, and I've had to play around with it a bit to get it to fit, so the worksheet does not look exactly like this. There are instruction sheets included. There is also a summary sheet which provides statistics on the employees, including charts and tabulations. In addition, there are individual sheets for any number of employees, and these are on tabs along the bottom of the spreadsheet. That brings us on to the SiLC affiliate scheme. This was launched earlier this year. Its purpose is to assist in achieving chartership and then SiLC and SQP registration based on clear objectives and using the skills framework, but also incorporating the requirements of the NQMS and the role of SQP. Note that entry can be at any level, so someone who is already chartered may still be interested in joining the scheme, and in fact that has already happened. Those on the scheme would initially have an advisor appointed by the institution or professional body. Once chartered, they would have a SiLC mentor to assist them up to taking the SiLC and SQP exam. SiLC have lists of nominated advisors put forward by the professional bodies and also lists of mentors nominated by SiLC. You will see on the right-hand side of the slide the capability levels 1 to 5 that I've already talked about earlier on. The roles within the affiliate scheme. An advisor is a qualified member of the host professional organisation or the membership development staff of that organisation. They are familiar with the chartership requirements of that organisation. They do not necessarily need to be professionally qualified or a SiLC. A mentor is a current SiLC registered on the list of approved mentors. They can offer specific guidance on the requirements of becoming a SiLC and SQP beyond chartership. The mentor need not be associated with the same professional organisation as the applicant. It is, however, sometimes useful if the mentor works for the same company or organisation as the affiliate, but not essential. So what are the criteria for joining? An applicant must be a graduate member or member of one of the qualifying professional organisations. And you will see these again on the next slide. Obviously, the applicant must have a genuine interest in the brownfield sector, and they must be aiming to become a full member of a qualifying professional organisation and to join the SiLC register. They need to maintain their commitment to the code of conduct of their professional organisation and that of SiLC. There is an annual fee. This is £50 plus VAT, but this includes 20% discount on the attendance fee for the SiLC annual forum. These are the professional organisations that support SiLC and are on the SiLC board and PTP. Members of the scheme will be designated as SiLC affiliates, each with a SiLC affiliate number. Thank you for listening. This slide just gives a few further links that you may be interested in with further information. I'll now hand back to Rihanna.
Thank you both of you, Roger and Paul. That was really interesting, really thorough, and hopefully that was beneficial to members as well. If anyone's got any questions or would like Roger or Paul to elaborate on any of the points that they've just spoken about, we do have a little bit of time, so do submit them in the chat box at the bottom. All these links and things will be shared along with the recording of this webinar on both the IES website and on our YouTube channel. So do make sure you sign up to the YouTube channel and subscribe to the channel so that you get notified when this is available. And we'll share all of these links so that they're interactive. Just one question, Roger. Sorry if you did mention this, but just to clarify, for somebody that's wanting to use the affiliate scheme and is already a member of the professional body, do they seek to contact SiLC or their professional body to join the scheme? How do you recommend it?
They contact SiLC. They contact Secretariat.
Yeah.
And the email address that is on one of the slides is the email address to use.
Got you. Perfect. Thank you. We do have one question that's come through and asking, as a chartered professional, would I be assigned a mentor if I wanted to go through the SiLC process?
Yes, is the answer to that. We have some people already on the scheme who are chartered, and they are interested in the mentoring through the process of becoming a SiLC. The guidance that is then offered in terms of what the requirements are. We also have introduction days or training days, again, which are mentioned on one of Paul's slides. And in those introduction and training days, there's a lot of information provided with regard to the exam process, what level applicants need to be at, the sort of things that happen in the interview. It's all intended to familiarise the applicant with the overall process. There's no need for anybody to be too nervous about it or feel it's too daunting a process. And all of that is explained and encouragement given.
Okay, excellent. That's really helpful.
Rhiannon, just up on that.
Yep.
That there's in fact a training scheme going on today of all days, and then there'll be 2 more dates in the new year. We try and take the training around the country, but we're also looking at running it as an online briefing as well, so that if people aren't able to travel quite so easily, they can still not miss out.
Okay, brilliant. That's really good. Thank you. There's a question about nuclear. Has there been much uptake of the scheme for use on nuclear sites? And if not, do you see this as an area which would benefit from further uptake?
I'm happy to take it, Roger, if you want.
Yeah, that's fine, Paul.
So I've done work on nuclear sites. Certainly the scheme is relevant to the land quality type of work that the nuclear sector looks at, both for operating and decommissioned sites. It's not often requested as a qualification in the tendering process, but the nuclear industry expects and demands very high levels of professional competence. And obviously SiLC is one of the ways of demonstrating that.
Okay, excellent. Another question around the affiliate scheme. Is it necessary to join the affiliate scheme in order to apply for SiLC? Do you have to be part of the scheme?
You don't have to be part of the affiliate scheme. This affiliate scheme has been launched in order to provide assistance, but it's not a mandatory requirement. What is highly recommended is that applicants to SiLC attend one of the introduction days that we've just talked about. There is a notable difference, I have to admit, when assessing candidates at interview between those that have attended an introduction day, stroke training day, and those that haven't. They are more likely to make some errors that don't need to be made if they haven't attended an introduction day.
Okay. So it's recommended but not compulsory.
As far as the affiliate scheme and the introduction days, recommended but not compulsory.
Perfect. And we do have a little bit of time, and there's a question around the process involved for the open book exam. Would one of you be able to just elaborate on that slightly?
I can talk about.
Roger, go ahead.
Okay. As far as the open book exam is concerned, candidates register to say that they are interested in becoming a SiLC. They are then sent an example of reports. There may be 3 reports or something like that, not necessarily including all the appendices, because we want to ensure that candidates aren't spending an over amount of time doing the exam. And the initial part of the exam is that they're basically writing a summary of the documents that they are looking at, as if they were working for a client, and a client had asked them to provide that summary. There's the second question is sometimes related to the documents they've been sent, but not necessarily related, and it will ask questions with regard to topical issues. There might be questions with regard to, say, asbestos, and some of the MPPF, things that applicants would be expected to know about. Emphasize the fact that it's an open book exam, and for some of the answering of these questions, candidates are quite at liberty to go onto the internet, look up various documents, and generally in the exam what's being looked for is the fact that applicants can do appropriate amount of research in order to answer a question, that they are either aware of or have found various guidance and other reference documents. Question 3 would be of a similar nature, but on a different topic. And what I've just said about question 2 would apply to question 3. And then for the 4th question, that is an online test. Once candidates have looked at some slides that are on the SiLC website, candidates only get to the slides once they've made an application to become a SiLC. And those slides tell them everything they need to know in order to be able to do the online exam. I stress that it's not onerous. Once somebody has really demonstrated that they are appropriate to become a SiLC, then they shouldn't have any difficulty with that online exam. So that basically covers the 4 questions. Those 4 questions, or the answers to them, are then assessed by 2 assessors. The assessors do not know who the applicants are. They just have a number, an applicant number, and that's all they know. And they basically mark those responses, answers to the exam questions, using what we call the answer guidelines. So there is, and that runs to a number of pages, and only the assessors have that, but it's a means of trying to get consistency between the assessors in terms of what they're looking for, how severe or otherwise they might be in terms of marking. Once that marking has been done, those results go back to the SiLC Secretariat. The marking sheets, because the assessors fill in a marking sheet, is then swapped between the assessors, and they can therefore see what the other assessors said. Both assessors may agree, they may not agree, and they are able then to discuss between them where they agree and where they don't agree. At the SiLC interview, those same 2 assessors, and it has to be the same 2 assessors, interview the candidate. The interview lasts an hour. There is also what we call a silent observer, who is usually an assessor as well, who is also in the room, basically just listening to the questions and the answers given by the candidate. It's quite a friendly environment at the interview. And the silent observer is there if there is, again, disagreement between the assessors. So the silent observer comes in as a 3rd person. And generally, if there is some disagreement between the assessors, then it's the best of 3. So there need to be 2 people in agreement as opposed to 3 people in agreement. And as Paul has explained, the results of that process are again put onto forms, which go through to the Secretariat. They go through to the PTP. PTP examine the forms that the assessors have sent through. They may have some queries. Usually they don't, because the process has been followed appropriately, and the PTP then agree the results. And the candidates are then notified as to whether they have passed the exam, or maybe they haven't quite reached the grade, in which case they are given an indication as to where there are deficiencies, and they are offered assistance in terms of potentially taking the exam again in the future.
Fantastic, that's brilliant. And just out of curiosity, what sort of pass rate do you have for first-time applicants going through the process?
It's normally, to be honest, be between about 60–65%.
Okay, brilliant. Great. Well, those are all the questions that have come in. I appreciate a couple of attendees did have some audio issues. If you did, this webinar has been recorded and it will be added to our YouTube channel. So subscribe to that and you will be able to listen to the full thing from start to finish, including the questions at a later date. So just to say thank you to both our speakers, Roger and Paul. That was really interesting, and I hope everybody who logged in found that beneficial. For those that did, this does class as CPD, so you can add this to your CPD record on the IES website. For those who are wanting to log into our next webinar, it's actually going to be tomorrow, and it's looking at coastal erosion and innovative technology used to develop artificial reefs and enhance our coastal defences. So it'll be a completely different topic, but it's at the same time, 12:30 tomorrow, so you can log into that on the website. All the registration details are on there for you. Do follow us on the YouTube channel, and thank you both for presenting and everybody for listening.